What's going on, everybody? My name is Wet Magic, and today we're going to be talking about some video settings in Vermintide 2. So if you go to your options, you go to your video settings, you will see a lot of things here. I like to play on full screen. Some people do the windowless full screen, or borderless full screen. Some people do windowed mode. I like full screen. I think it's fine. I actually play on a laptop. I know that's weird. It's got a 1080p monitor. So obviously you can't go higher than that. If you use 1440 or have a 4K setup, that would be on there, but I don't do that. Field of view, I set it to 95. When you first get the game, when you play like your first map, the game will set it actually on 60, which is like really zoomed in, I think, way too much. So you back it out, I think 95, 90, 100 is pretty decent. If you back it all the way out to like 120, it kind of does this like weird fisheye effect, and you can see it's very disorienting. Some people will actually play like this because they want to see everything and turn like just a little bit faster. I hate that. No, I think 95 is a good field of view. You can kind of see everything pretty well. The game looks fairly normal. I like it. It's good. Yeah, Vsync kind of just smooths out your frame rate when you're turning, and says it prevents tearing, but you're hardly going to notice it. If you're looking to get as much frames as you can out of this game, I would recommend turning it off. Now down here, you can actually cap the frame rate in this game, which is really nice. I leave it at 60 because I have kind of not a super powerful machine, but you can go up to 90, 120, 144, 165. You can have it off. You can have some kind of, exterior software to kind of cap it for you if you have a really super crazy machine. Maybe you're at like 300 frames, so I don't know. Personally, I like 60. It means I don't go too high, so when a horde spawns, your frame rate's going to dip down. Mine usually goes down to like 30 or 40 with my setup, which isn't bad at all. Keeps the frame rate looking fairly nice, fairly stable. If I were to have it capped at say 90, I could probably get up to 80, 70 frames sometimes, but all that oscillating up from 70, 80 back down to 30, 40 would cause like a choppy frame rate, and it would look bad. So I just leave it at 60. Max stacking frames, I honestly have never even messed with this. I just turn it all the way down. As it says here, the low setting will result in an unstable frame rate but lower input latency. This is what I like, because input latency just means like when you click, like if you're going to click to attack, the lowest latency possible would be like your character in game would attack pretty much simultaneously as you would click. But if you turn it up more, there's a chance, depending on your machine, if you click, it might take a little bit longer for your character to actually attack. So I keep this one low. I want as little input latency as possible. Now down here, overall quality, they have some preset options: low, lowest, medium, high, extreme. I keep mine kind of custom because I have kind of a strange setup here. I have a laptop. It's when we're talking about settings like this, there's two real main factors to consider, and that's CPU and GPU usage. CPU being your central processing unit, aka just your processor. Mine is a Ryzen 7 1700 8-core processor. Your GPU, your graphics processing unit, mine is a Radeon TM RX 580. I'm not sure what that is equivalent to in the NVIDIA world, but I believe it's lower than a 1080, so take that for what you will. So textures, I keep my character and my environment texture quality both at medium. I think it looks pretty decent and doesn't give me too much frame rate trouble. It is low on the GPU usage for both of them. My main point here is that I'm trying not to use up too much GPU and CPU usage, but I also want the game to look fairly nice, so I keep it a medium. If you have a higher end machine, you can obviously turn that up to high. You do you, boo. I like medium. I often record as well. This is more of a playing / recording setup. Recording makes your computer work harder, so your frame's going to be lower as you're using more processing power and all that. So I keep those on medium. Particles, particle quality, literally just how good things look when they render, I keep that as low as possible. It's not going to be all that important. It is high GPU usage, so you know it might look better, but for me, I keep it low. I don't need it. Transparency, resolution, effects that are transparent, so that's the resolution for those. Not, again, not all that important to me because I don't care about them. It's medium GPU usage, so I turn it all the way down as much as it can go. Scatter density, this pretty much just adds a certain amount of like decorative grass and rubble and stuff like that. It's low on the performance impact for both GPU and CPU, but I don't need it, honestly. The game already has like built-in weeds and grass and cornfields or whatever, so I can just turn this off. I don't need the grass, the extra grass. Save me a little bit of processing power there. Blood decal amount, I just turned that down to 10. It is low on the performance impact, so if you want like a bunch of blood, I guess you can turn it up, but I think 10 looks fine. Down here, lighting, this is going to be the big one. This is the big frame rate killer section right here. So if you find that your game is dropping frames or you're not getting quite as high as you want, this might be the section to look at for you. Local light and shadow quality, as you can see, the performance impact is by far the biggest so far. Medium GPU usage, high CPU usage, all for enabling and disabling the quality of shadow casting local lights. So like literally just shadows and lights. I don't care. I don't, this is not worth it to me. It might make the game look better. So if you have a really great machine, good for you. Mine's not that powerful, so I turn that off. Sun shadows, the same kind of thing. Medium and high GPU and CPU usage. All for some shadows from the sun. It looks nice when you have it on, but it's a lot of processing power. I think the game doesn't look, you know, it's just like a less shadowy game when you turn it off and you save all that usage. So that's what I do. Max shadow casting lights. Again, crazy high performance impact here. I turn it all the way down. I don't even care what it does. I turn it all the way down. It's just shadows. It's not that important. I'm just trying to play the game at a consistent frame rate. I don't need shadows and crazy lights and everything. Volumetric fog quality, this is kind of the same thing. You actually can't turn this one off, much to my dismay. So I keep it at the lowest possible. It is high GPU usage and none on the CPU, luckily, which is nice. Some maps have, you know, fog built in, and with the new weather effects there is a fog one, so I just keep it all the way down. Helps me to see more and see better when it happens to be in a section of a map, because there's less fog. So there you go. Ambient light quality, this is kind of a different one. This affects like certain parts of certain maps. The biggest one probably being the end event at Righteous Stand. So if you have this on, you'll notice that the end event of that map is really dark. And if you have you know, kind of trouble seeing, consider turning this off. Hunger in the dark, the same kind of thing. That dark part, if you turn this down to low, you can actually, I think, see just a tad bit better. Doesn't make a huge bit of difference. It's still going to be dark, but it's a little bit nicer and easier to see for that. It also affects the little ice cave part in the Skittergate, but I don't notice a huge difference there. And then I think it affects the castle and Enchanter's Lair. There's probably some other ones that I'm missing, but those two are not that big of a deal if you want to turn it off. I find that with my machine, especially with the new weather effects, when I get like the rain effect or something on Righteous Stand, and I have this on, it's fine for the whole map except that end part, because you have like, it's trying to do the shadows, but then it's also trying to do like the rain effect on top of that, and it can kill some frames. So I just keep it low, and it's been fine. Auto exposure speed is like how fast light changes, and I think I keep it at 1.3. I could probably turn that down a little bit. The lower you have it, I believe, the quicker the transition will happen, and the more, like, the higher you have it, the slower the transition. I think this is a seizure preventative setting for people that suffer from like epilepsy and stuff like that. I will tell you though, if you put it all the way down, it can help out on convocation of decay. When people jump out of that little circle at the end part, you know, there's this big long transition where everybody is blinded for like what feels like an eternity. So if you have this real low, it'll just be like a, you know, that quick. But I just keep it on 1.3. But this would probably be something that would be tailored to each individual person. You'd have to kind of play around with it. So figure that out for yourself, will you? Down here, post-processing. This is pretty much how I get my game to look fairly good at all, with all these settings turned down. Anti-Aliasing. You have the options of none, FXAA, and TAA. So right now I have the highest one, TAA. If I flip it to none, and I click apply, keep changes, and then back off, you can already kind of notice it, but things are not as smooth around the edges of, you know, the graphics. So like the wood up there is a little bit choppier, the edge around his hood and his axe is just a little bit, you know, kind of staircasey. If I go back and I go to video, throw TAA back on, keep the changes, and check it out again, that looks a lot better. That's smoother, that's way better looking. And the best part is that it is only where is it? It is only high GPU usage and nothing on the CPU. So pretty much this is what's going to make the game look fairly good, fairly playable. If you know, don't have a crazy good machine, you can meet halfway with FXAA or simply none. Now the reason I like TAA is because you have the sharpness filter right here, and this is really nice. This just gives an added focus to all the setting, all the graphics. You know, it makes them it literally just makes them sharper, makes them clearer, makes them what seems like a little bit more high def. And this one is great because it's only low GPU usage and nothing for CPU. So it's low impact. There's really no reason not to have this on. This is an awesome setting. I love the sharpness filter. Down here, SSAO, this is a really important one. This can go all the way up to extreme, but I keep it at high. I think high looks good for, you know, the performance impact of it. If I were to turn it off and keep the changes, what do you notice? You can see like all the shadows along the wall and everything are gone, making the game look kind of gross and kind of not as good, right? So I go back and I put on my SSAO back to high. Shit, not extreme. High. Keep the changes. Check it out. You see this wall is like much darker. The thing up there, darker. SSAO uses shadows to kind of give areas like dimension, like all between these bricks and everything. That's all SSAO working. Or through the corner, you know, it makes it look like way better, like a shadow would actually be there, which is cool. Bloom, another one that's low impact that you should definitely have on, especially if you play Sienna a lot, because this is what's going to make her fire effects like look just really good. If you have it off, you know, some people have no choice but to turn it off. I think there's a huge noticeable difference with Bloom. Having it off and having it on makes her effects just look so much less good when it's off. And that's pretty much everything I have. Everything else after that I turn off. Skin shading, I'm hardly going to notice it, honestly. And it's medium GPU usage, so I just turn it off. Depth of field, this is something like if you have a really good machine, you can do this. I don't have a really good machine. I have a decent machine for like a laptop, but it's high GPU usage. And this renders quality like farther along in the distance, basically. Instead of, you know, when the closer you get to an area, it renders it like that. To me, like if I have this on at all, it'll totally tank my frame rate. This is a pretty giant frame rate killer itself, because it just makes like everything around you super freaking high def and rendered. So I personally turn this off, but it can go, you know, I think it's just on and off actually. So yeah, you'd be the judge for yourself. That's going to depend entirely on your machine. Screen space reflections, I think this is just for like puddles and lakes and water effects. Not something that's very important to me, and it is high GPU usage, so I just turn that off. It's not huge, it's not important. Light shafts, you know, you probably could turn this one on. It is low GPU usage. If you get the sun, you know, in a weather effect, and you're looking like through a couple trees or something, or through a doorway, you'll see it kind of shining in, and it's a nice little effect, but it's not important. It's not relative. It's not important to like the gameplay itself, so I turn it down. Lens flare, another one. It's kind of a low impact thing. Basically, like if you look at the sun, you'll get a little lens flare effect. To me, that's annoying. I don't need that, so I turn it off. Color and lens distortion, chromatic aberration. I guess this is some kind of color effect. I don't know. I don't really mess around with it. I turn it off. I leave it off. To me, it's not important. I think the game looks fine the way it is. Motion blur is a medium GPU usage one, and so if you find like when you turn in game and you think it looks kind of weird, like try turning it off, because you might be able to turn like just a little bit faster. It might not be as smooth, and it might not look quite as good, but you might find that you'll have an easier time seeing when you turn with this one. Physics debris down here, I get that it, you know, enables physically simulated dynamic debris. I get that, but I honestly don't know what this one does. It's medium CPU usage, but like you would think like debris, like okay, so this lets you like break the doors and stuff. Well, it doesn't, because I turned it off and I can still break the doors. So like I'm not even sure what this does, honestly. So I just leave it off. It's not that important to me. And then animation distance, like this is when, you know, maybe the characters are talking and they're moving around or whatever. To me, not that important. Not really relative to the game, so I turn it all the way down. This would be the kind of settings you would use if you have like a medium to low tier system. I would think this would be a pretty good setup. Right now I am chilling at 60 FPS. You can't see it, but I have a little counter that I can see, and I'm running through, you know, so like just running through a map, I would be 60 FPS constant, you know, and obviously when a horde would spawn, that would go down to 30 or 40, which would still be fairly playable, and I'd be totally okay with that. So there you go, guys. Those are the settings for you that I like to use. Hope this helps. Hope you learned something, and hopefully you get to increase your frame rate. Thanks, and take care.